At 4 a.m. on New Year's Day, 1998, two friends boarded a water taxi in New Zealand and vanished, never to be seen again. Their disappearance sparked a decades-long debate centered around an unknown man and his true identity. With eyewitnesses saying one thing and the controversial conviction saying another, the case remains disputed to this day. So today, we ask, who was the mysterious man behind the murders of Ben Smart and Olivia Hope? This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the unknown. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
We take Ubers like there's no tomorrow. Easy peasy.
Right.
And we get lazy about checking the license plate maybe or whatnot, or making sure it's the picture matches who's driving. And so this just reinduces that fear.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're thinking.
I don't know, it's just scary. Yeah, we so nonchalantly get into strangers' car nowadays. I just remember back in the days, like, don't get into a car with a stranger.
Right.
Now we pay for that.
Stranger danger. Well, it was also like, don't put your face online, don't put your name out there.
That's true.
Anonymity. And now it's like, we need your identity if you want to use social media.
And you're just like, okay.
And so everyone's like, this is my favorite this, and this is my opinion on that, and here's my face, and here's my geolocation. Yeah, it's funny now, isn't it? Like the way, you're totally right, the way when we reflect back on being a kid, how everything's turned on its head. And here's the thing, I don't want to sit in a world and trust that everyone's so sinister that I can't trust anything.
Yeah, because you never do anything, you never go anywhere, you never see anything, experience, whatnot.
Right. But in this line of work, with you and I exploring all sorts of things from the paranormal and the unknown to true crime and the unsolved cases we talked about, there is a bit of a focus in a survivorship bias, I guess, in a weird sense of seeing all cases like this. It starts to make it feel like it's way more common. And so, yeah, it does give you a little bit of the heebie-jeebies, a little bit of the fear of, oh God, can I trust everybody? Yeah. Probably not everybody, but yeah, I totally get you.
It gets a little scary for sure.
Now, this is an interesting case, and I kind of want to shatter the glass real quick because, we've talked about unsolved cases and we've talked about suspects and theories in those cases. This one is kind of new for Red Web in particular. It has a conviction in it. We're going to talk about the disappearance, what happened that night. We're going to talk about the trial. And man, I was looking at like 280-page documents of court cases, and there's so many little pieces of evidence in this particular case. We're going to do our best, right? We cover a new case every single week. We're going to do our best to get as deep as possible and give you everything you need to know how we get to the end, to the conviction. And then we're going to talk about that conviction. Why does it feel weird? Why does it feel like a wrongful conviction? And what are the elements of it? Mm-hmm. And then there's like a tiny theory that attempts to answer this, but otherwise, there's not a whole slew of other suspects and other theories. So it's going to be an interesting conversation with, I don't know, I'm very interested to see your insights and your kind of takeaways as we go through, Fredo.
Okay. Yeah, I'm intrigued in terms of like what aspects of this case make it such a big debate as opposed to something that's straightforward or something that is, a mystery, you know what I mean? Unsolved or whatnot. Like, seems like there's some information that come to light, hence why it's a whole court case.
Yeah. And then also like to kind of tease out some of the things we're going to talk about. I mean, like many appeals, some appeals as recent as September last year, 2025. So this is kind of alive in certain ways. And it's one of those cases too, that it happened in the late 90s. And as it ushered into the new millennia, we see a lot of cases around this time period start to have new context thanks to DNA analysis and the advents in that arena.
True.
We're not going to see a whole lot on that there, but there is an ingredient of that in this particular case. But before we dive in, there's some exciting developments in the Red Web test chambers. Fredo, we've had the buff scientists tinkering away with their enormous lead beakers.
Yeah.
They're very smart, very strong. Task Force, as you know, for Movie Club, we did The Matrix. It was just in our DNA. It's Christian, our producers. It's his favorite movie. We all geeked out about that movie. and we talk about the Easter eggs, our takeaways, the philosophy. We break down the plot. There's so much conversation in that. Please go listen to it at redwebpod.com. But then we had an idea, a dangerous, beautiful idea.
Oh, yep. Okay. Yeah. There you go.
And that idea begins and manifests this Friday. And this Friday also begins the month of May. And so, Task Force, I invite you to please join us this May for our continuation of the exploration of the Matrix in what we're calling, aptly, Matrix.
Yeah, we felt good about that one.
So enter the Matrix. It's too good.
We feel really good about that one.
We feel very good about
We're
that.
proud
one.
about that.
Yeah. And then listen to that first episode because one, that movie is incredible. We love The Matrix. And also we came up with this idea in real time in that episode.
Yeah. When you go, how'd they come up with it? You could see, the thought process and the sparks and flying in our heads and stuff.
So, we've covered heist movies. We've covered horror movies for sure. From B movies, from crappy and campy to classic, we've run the gambit. But now, we've talked about The Matrix. We've talked about glitches in The Matrix and in reality and things like that. So it was only natural, but now we're just going hog wild into The Matrix. So come join us again at redwebpod.com. That continues this Friday for our revisit of The Matrix Reloaded. That's the second one. They're all something. Reloaded, resurrected, and
Revolutions?
Enumerated. Yeah, revolutions.
Revolutions.
The one we all forget,
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at this case because there's a lot to dive into, a lot of detail. And I'm going to do my best, as we are a weekly podcast, to dive in deep. So Fredo, if you will, let me take you back to December 31st, 1997. This was a day when Ben Smart and Olivia Hope went missing in New Zealand after attending a New Year's Eve party. Now, as we do here on Red Web, we like to start off with a visual so you know who we're talking about and you know where we're talking about. So first up, we have both Ben Smart and Olivia Hope in this image for you.
Oh, okay. Looks like a young couple. Ben's got the backwards hat with the shades. Got the little button, half button down, quarter button down. He's got it untucked. He's just pointing at the camera.
The ooze and a little bit of that charm, a little of that charisma.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, very young couple, very much of the 90s.
It's very 90s.
And I think this looks like a screen cap from like a VHS tape, like a home movie.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few other images of them out there, but this is kind of the one that is featured the most throughout the articles we saw. And Task Force, if you're not watching the video version of this podcast on Spotify or YouTube, you can see these images on our social media at RedWebPod. Now, the pair was in the same friend group, and all of this group decided to attend a party, which was kind of like a public event, at a place known as the Furno Lodge. And this comes from newzealand.com, and here's another image for you, Fredo, to give you an idea of what this lodge looks like.
Damn!
Yeah, it's gorgeous, huh?
That's nice! What the hell? It looks secluded. They got a whole tropical looking forest behind them. It just goes on and hills and higher hills behind that. And then you got a little fruit tree out in the front.
Yeah.
Freshly trimmed and kept grass. Tiniest little waterfall or water. What is that?
Water feature or something like that?
Water feature there in the front. Single story building. Looks sizable. Patio seating. To the right is a little, a little extra house in the backyard or something like that.
Yep.
That's nice.
It's very nice, and it is a well-known resort. It is a family-owned resort and hotel located in the Endeavour Inlet of the area known as Marlborough Sounds. This is a collection of sunken river valleys located in the northern tip of New Zealand's South Island. So if you don't know, New Zealand is split into a north and south, and this is kind of in the fingers at the very north end of that South Island. So to give you some context, first and foremost, you're right. This place is stunning. It is a beautiful resort. New Zealand is gorgeous in and of itself. But I also look at something like this in the context of a case like this, and I can't help but think of all the horror movies that are placed at a place like this, where I go, that's a trap, don't blink.
Someone brought them to this little place, and it's not going to end up good for them.
Yeah. I've seen too many horror movies, I think. But ultimately, I do want to say, because I was curious if there wasn't any reason why they went to this location, and it sounds like both Smart and Hope lived kind of around this area. So they were locals, and so they would have caught wind of this party. And to kind of contextualize where this is, I've given you geographically where it's at, but because we know this is a disappearance, I wanted to paint more of a picture here. And so this is about 30 to 45 minutes by way of water from the nearest town of Picton, New Zealand, which itself is about a 25 or so minute drive from the next major town. So you're not extremely remote, but you also kind of are.
Yeah, there's some distance there. You can't just jog down the street.
And I think water travel for these areas is mostly common. Of course, you can get there by road, I believe, but it would definitely be a much longer journey. So coming back to this party now that these two and their friend group are at, it is, by all reports, quite a large event. Somewhere between the ballpark of 1,500 and 2,000 other partygoers are there that night. So it's bumping. Now, Olivia Hope, who was only 17 at the time, had traveled to the party with her sister Amelia, as well as 7 friends, so there's about 9 of them in their group. To get there, the group chartered a yacht called the Tamarack, which was also where they intended to sleep that night. So yes, this is a hotel and resort, but there's only so many rooms, you have thousands of people coming out. So they charter this yacht, which can sleep, I think it was about 12 people. So ample room for Amelia, Olivia, and all of their friends to kind of sleep. Now, Ben Smart was 21, and he arrived at the lodge separately of the group, but joined up with all of them later on in the night. Now, jumping through the festivities, midnight comes and goes. It's New Year's, so everyone's celebrating, and the party continues on for the next couple hours. But around 4 a.m. on January 1st, 1998, the party had seemed to die down. Smart and Hope then took a water taxi back to the Tamarack, the yacht that they intended to sleep on, and they're going to call it a night. They're just going to rest their heads, wake up in the morning, and go home. However, when they got to the yacht, they found all the beds had been taken by other partygoers. Don't know all the full details there, but ultimately all the beds were filled, and this kind of left them with nowhere to sleep that night.
Damn, it's just a series of things that are leading to where they end up. But also, my goodness, we're gonna bet on the yacht.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't say I've been in a situation like this, but as a young man in high school, I did some travel rugby where we do tournaments in places, and so there was definitely limited rooms for a bunch of guys to be sleeping in, and at certain points, someone ends up in your bed, you're throwing them out. I'm like, I'm getting to sleep. Get on out of my bed.
Yeah, leave.
Or you take a blanket and go to the floor, but hindsight is unfortunately 20/20, right? So now they're on the boat. They don't have anywhere to sleep. They're trying to think, what should they do next? And there are reports that the two were intoxicated to a certain degree. I don't want to say that they were wasted, but certainly by eyewitness accounts, they weren't sober. And so this does play into some of the decision making, I would imagine. Now, they're still on the boat, and the same water taxi that dropped them off actually returns. And this time, that water taxi is dropping off Amelia and another friend. At this point, Olivia and Ben decide to reboard the taxi in order to go in search of another place to sleep. We don't know exactly where they were planning to go. There's no clear report, and we can only kind of guess as to this idea, but my best guess would be that maybe they intended to go back to the resort and see if there was a room or just options.
Right.
Maybe there's other people with other options. So they reboard the water taxi, and on board you have 4 people. A guy named Guy Wallace, who was a bartender at the party, but he's also the driver of the water taxi. Because we're going to talk about Guy Wallace quite a bit, I want you to get a face for the name, and so we do have an image of him.
Okay.
Kind of a bog standard gentleman.
Yep. Looks like he works there.
He does, yes. Astute observation. But yeah, he worked that night and also, shuttled the water taxi. And also on the water taxi was a young couple named Hayden Morrissey and Sarah Dyer. And then the 4th person was an unidentified man. We don't know outright who that man was, and this is kind of where the case rests everything on. I mean, well, you'll see why. So upon learning of their situation, this unidentified man actually offered for Hope and Smart to sleep on his boat because, they're all on this water taxi to go back to their boats. And so he says, well, hey, I have a boat. I have extra space. Come with me. The pair accepts his offer, and Wallace drops them off all together at his boat before then taking off to take the young couple to their residence. So witnesses would describe the boat that Hope and Smart boarded as a 2-masted ketch, about 12 meters or 39 feet long. It was painted white, had a long blue stripe, and 2 portholes. In fact, I have 2 images for you. One is an image of a catch. It's not the catch we're talking about, but it shows you what a catch is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's not a large boat, but you can fit a handful of people. It's got I don't know proper terms, but looks like it's got like 3 sails. One big one to catch that wind.
Yes.
Up in the front, a couple tails trailing behind that. Just a deck, that's it.
Yeah, I think you can go down below deck a little bit.
Just a little bit though. It doesn't look like it has too much depth, but that would be a small little like cabin that you'd walk into. Nothing massive.
It's a great observation because that's kind of what defines a catch. So it looks like there's 3, but there's 2 masts. You have the main one that you're talking about, the big one up front or kind of in the middle of the ship, and it has that extra sail up front. So it's a little bit more complicated, but that's the main one. And then you have an aft mast in the back. And that's, I'm not a sailor, but I imagine that's for extra wind catching and a little bit more maneuverability. But what's interesting is that Wallace, Morrissey, and Dyer all recall the ship that they were dropped off at being a catch like this. In fact, I'm kind of jumping the gun here. I want to show you this next image already because we have a sketch, I believe that was made by Guy Wallace himself. He sketched out what he saw the ship to be. Go ahead and take a look at that.
Oh, this looks different. Multiple floors, a little bit kind of like a pirate ship-esque because you got like a lower deck with a bunch of like circle windows that go along it.
The ports, yeah.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that he does put catch on there, and there's multiple portholes, whereas his description said that there was 2. But I would say that the difference is mostly the amateur sketch versus like the complexity of the mast. So you still have the 2 sails and the relatively small, 40-foot boat.
Right.
What are you seeing? What else?
Yeah, I mean the 2 sails, and then it just looks like there's a whole bottom deck to this.
I see. Those might be the lines he was talking about.
Oh, okay.
The blue line along the side.
Interesting.
It's hard to see because it does kind of, he's got some writing on there to notate a few things. Like it says lots of ropes, but some of it's a little hard to read.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to read. 38 to 40-foot catch, it says. Question mark.
Yeah, and it's dated March 1st, 1998. So I believe that was a sketch that he had provided. So different in a few ways, right? Because the first one is a generic catch, just to give you an idea what a catch looks like. But otherwise, this sketch has 2 masts, and I want you to look at, just remember some of the details that we saw in this image as we proceed. Now, of course, as we wrap up the disappearance, after Wallace drops everybody off, the unknown man, Hope, and Smart, this would be the last anyone would see of the 2 young people.
So how many moments you go throughout your day thinking like, okay, see you again, see you next time, or just take a little moments for granted, and then you just never, and then I'm sure, they're reliving that moment in their head over and over and over again.
Sure. You can't imagine that any given moment might be a last moment. Going off with a strange man onto his boat certainly does raise more flags than going about your normal day.
True.
But again, this is unusual circumstances, and we don't have all the information, right? Was there familiarity? We'll never know. Was there a mistake in decision making? We can only guess.
All we can do is make guesses, and yeah, there's nothing you can do.
So, other than like gathering as much clues and details as possible. But what I did find interesting, certain cases showed different things with family reactions and the timeliness of reactions. Sometimes people kind of hold as they try to feel things out, but the families here immediately knew something was wrong when Hope and Smart didn't make their way home that day on January 1st. This was like a known quantity. Hey, they're going to go to this party, they're going to spend the night on the yacht, and then they're going to be home. The fact that they're not home and they're not letting us know, something is wrong.
Yeah.
This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Aura Frames. Mother's Day is coming up, and if you're still looking for a gift, why not frame what makes your mom special with Aura Frames? I really love Aura Frames. I have them throughout my house, and my parents also have them. And what's awesome is that you are not relegated to one photo. You can put so many photos in every frame, and they cycle through it, and they can randomize. And so you are filled with all of these memories. And if you're ever across state lines, you can easily send photos to your family, like your mom, and give them updates as to what's going on in your life. Aura Frames offers free unlimited storage. You can add as many photos and videos as you want. You can preload photos before it ships, meaning your mom can see all the photos that you want her to see as soon as she opens the box. And you can keep adding photos at any time, anywhere. Share your photos and videos with the free Aura app, or you can text photos straight to your frame. Speaking of the app, the Aura app reached #1 in the App Store on Christmas Day in 2025. Make Mother's Day special with Aura frames. Named #1 by Wirecutter, you can save on the gifts moms love by visiting auraframes.com. For a limited time, Task Force members can get $25 off their best-selling Carver mat frame with code REDWEB. That's AURA frames.com. Promo code REDWEB. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. On January 2nd, 1998, the two were officially reported missing. And that's where we have Detective Inspector Rob Pope, who is assigned to the case just a few days later on January 5th. Immediately, police began focusing their efforts on identifying the mysterious man that Hope and Smart had left that water taxi with. I think that's an astute move. Obviously, that's the last they were seen, and he's the only unknown player so far. Where better to start? In eyewitness testimonies collected on January 3rd and January 5th, Wallace describes the man as a wiry build. In other words, thin, slender physique, around 5'9", with short wavy dark hair, and about 2 days worth of facial hair. He seemed rugged in appearance, wearing a Levi's shirt with jeans. Now this threw me for a bit because in modern times, if I hear Levi's shirt, I might think of like a branded graphic tee. But what is being conveyed here is more of a traditional Levi's button-up, like a denim blue button-up shirt. And I mention that because that is kind of a player in this conversation eventually. Now, Wallace also stated that he recognized the man from the party, recalling that he and other bar staff had been serving him amongst the patrons all evening. So we know that he was at the party that night. That's also probably how he's on the water taxi at that hour. Now, after giving this description, Wallace was instructed to give a sketch or draw a sketch of what he believed the boat looked like. And that's the image I already showed you because I kind of wanted you to see that next to just a generic catch. Ultimately, he draws 2 masts, he writes 38 to 40 foot catch, and he underlines catch twice with a question mark. So it's kind of like, yes, it has 2 masts, that is important, but is it a catch? That seems to be maybe up for debate, right? He did put a question mark. But speaking of sketches, I didn't know where else to put this. There is a police sketch of the unknown man that guy, Mr. Wallace, helped create. And so I do want to show you that image here as well. Now this was generated, I believe, maybe a few months after the fact, but this is how he describes the man.
Okay, he's got a long, kind of like wavy hair. That's like bangs in the front, and then he's got a full party in the back. The hair goes down, his neck.
Yeah, I think that is a key detail to remember because what I'm kind of doing here is I'm trying to be unbiased. I'm just trying to lay out the facts as they are,
right? Because
there's a lot of opinions when it comes to wrongful convictions one way or the other. I just want to be a neutral arbiter of detail. But yes, the hair does look of a certain length, kind of that medium length wavy hair. That will be important later. So coming back to the boat now, Wallace described it as a timber-built, well-maintained boat, and he noted that it was tied between 3 to 5 or so other boats. So they were all kind of in a huddle, I suppose. It's worth mentioning that in these early investigation days, police also interviewed several other partygoers. We're not going to be able to go into every single interview or every single deposition when we get to the trial. We're sticking to kind of the key players, but this helps inform them on where they go. So from what Wallace said, and from all the accounts that they talked to, coming from partygoers, police narrowed in on a 26 or 27-year-old Scott Watson. It's hard to figure out his specific birthday, so he was either 26 or 27 at the time. But this is the next image I have for you. And this is as he was, I believe, in either 2024 or 2025. So just take that into account. It's been almost 20 years.
Yeah, he's aged. He's an older male.
Yeah. So this comes from RNZ, and this is him in one of the many appeal trials of the conviction. So you kind of know where the conviction's going to go. But this Scott Watson becomes the person of interest unbudgingly from the police.
Really?
Yeah, we don't really see a lot of names or suspects at this point.
So they were just hell-bent on this is the guy.
It's possible. Many people believe that. We'll continue on with the investigation and the trial, and then I'm very curious to see what your read is once you have some more information.
Okay.
But with regards to that night, Watson was reportedly drunk, loud, rude to women on the night of the party, making kind of some unseemly comments and jokes or what have you. And using this information, police included Watson's photo in lineups presented to Wallace. So basically saying like, we think Watson might be the individual. Let's come back to Wallace with a lineup with a bunch of photos of a bunch of men who might have been there that night. And so Wallace is interviewed on January 9th, and he looks at all of these photos, and he says he doesn't recognize anybody in the photos. Remember, we know that Watson was there that night. Wallace remembers Watson being there that night, but with regards to the mysterious man, he doesn't pinpoint any of these individuals. Regardless, on January 12th, police seized Watson's boat, which was called the Blade, and Blade was vastly different than what Wallace had sketched. Yeah. The Blade only had one mast, and instead of being a well-maintained vessel made out of wood and timber, it was made out of steel. Notably, it also had no portholes and no blue stripe. So despite these glaring differences, police made it clear that Watson was considered to be their primary suspect.
Interesting. Because it's just like, do the cops, do they feel the pressure from media and society? And so they're like, we need to really chase something down. But then again, it's like, how hard do you fall for the description? Because it was nighttime, right?
It was nighttime, yeah. It was 4 a.m. or a little after 4 a.m.
I don't know how clear was the sky that night. That moonlight will give you enough lighting to see something. But if it's not, I don't know, like boat on the water, could you see all the little intricate details?
You make a good point, to play devil's advocate. If it's in a batch of 3 to 5 other boats, is it possible that Wallace dropped them off at one of these boats thinking that this ketch was the boat, but actually it was this steel ship right next to it, right? Again, knowing where the case goes and knowing relatively how uncommon ketches are in this area, I saw some people talking about this case basically saying like, you recognize a ketch like you recognize a Lamborghini. It's not one of those boats that you just go like you don't recognize. Like I saw a Lamborghini drive down my street 2 weeks ago and I went, what's that doing here?
Yeah.
And and I remember it. But I'm not going to remember a Toyota Corolla from a day ago.
Yeah. That's a very good point. But also, okay, so does he know for sure, like, you know what I mean? Did he drop them off and then watch them walk onto the boat?
See, that's a great question. Those are the details that I can't...
Right. How do you know those details? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Those are the details I can't confidently say, but it's a good question.
It also comes into play here, I feel like.
Totally. And you have a little bit of the fog of the party. Everyone might be drinking. I assume Wallace, being an employee, isn't, he's driving and he's working. And so, but you could still be tired. And so details could be fuzzied over. It's possible. It's totally possible. So, right. The police consider Watson to be the primary suspect, and they start analyzing photos from the evening's events. They look over all these New Year's Eve photos, and they start interviewing boat skippers. I believe it's boat skippers who went to the party, but we couldn't figure out if it was also boat skippers who operated in the area. But ultimately, people who would know what a vessel might look like and have their eyes set out. They couldn't really verify that a ketch was in the Endeavour Inlet that night where the pair had been dropped off. So they're not proving it wasn't there, but they also can't prove that it was, that any ketch was there. So that's an interesting note. That said, in the weeks that followed, many had reported sightings of a 2-masted ketch throughout the Marlborough Sounds. So whether it was the ketch or a ketch, we don't know, but it is worth noting that eyewitnesses did see a similar boat in the area throughout the weeks. So on one hand, this raises doubts about Wallace's eyewitness account, but on the other hand, it's possible this boat arrived after dark and maybe left before sunset. Just because you're a skipper in the area doesn't mean that you are going to see and remember all the boats, though a ketch would, as I said, kind of stand out. And so, again, I'm not a judge or prosecutor or defense attorney or anything. I could see in this haze how you might see it either way.
Yeah, it's just kind of blurry lines. Nothing like truly definitive.
But man, the descriptions are so wildly off. I can't help but think about that.
They are, and they vary. I don't know. And so it's just kind of left and right here. Like, what makes them so hell-bent on him?
Yeah. Now, I want to play devil's advocate here at this early stage because the rest of the facts that follow start to really tip opinions in the other direction, I think. So again, was it a misidentified ship? It's possible. Was it a ship that was properly identified, but then police grabbed the wrong man in the wrong ship? Also possible.
True.
But I say that, let's continue. So there were people who came forward, like I said, in the weeks that followed with sightings of a ketch, a two-masted ketch throughout the immediate area. And reportedly, they were turned away, and they were either told that their statements were not needed, or they were never followed up with by police after making the reports.
Like, why? Is it because they were so hell-bent already and like locked into a specific target?
It's a good question. So I won't attempt to answer it. I'll let somebody else do it. So later, a former detective named Mike Chappell, who was working on this case, he would claim that officers were told not to investigate sightings of two-masted ketches.
Why?
Well, I don't know.
Oh,
right? It could be that they feel so confident that they have their man that they should not chase frivolous stories.
yeah. It's like, don't waste time on that. We've got it. We've got it right here, which is wild.
Yeah. Or for some reason they have it out for this particular person and they want to go after this person and they're not interested in chasing down further leads or further clues. I can't really answer that. And again, this is where you can go either way. And you and I have both we've sat on both sides of this fence before, depending on the context of the case. But on one hand, do you trust Mike Chappell and what he's coming forward to say? On the other hand, why would he have any reason to lie? I don't know. I don't know why people lie. And there's no way for me to know just out of pocket what's real and what's a lie. But taking it at face value, it's starting to look a little strange. They got a different boat with completely different details. And now Mike Chappell's going, we were told to look the other way. And eyewitnesses are saying, yeah, they definitely looked the other way when I reported this. So
yeah, it's not looking good. It's really coming down. I mean, as of right now, it's just really appearing that the police are just like, we want to, I mean, again, the pressure from the media, which is a total thing, right? Pressure from the public. It's like, where are the answers? And, not to assume, but if you have kids that are partying with access to a lavish place and yachts and all that kind of stuff, good chance their parents have money. And they're hiring expensive lawyers to really apply the pressure, etc. Your average person doesn't go on a party with with access to a yacht in such a nice location like that.
Sure. That's a great point. We don't know about those elements.
And so it could just be the police just feeling the pressure and just like, hey, we got a guy that we could follow a lead on. Let's just put our time and resources into that, which is not the way it should be done, but
it's very, very possible. So this goes on for a few months, the investigation, hearing leads and reports, etc., chasing down Scott Watson. And then on April 20th, 1998, Wallace was shown another photo montage. So remember in the first one, Watson was included. Wallace didn't pick anybody. But this time, it's been a few months. He's shown another montage of photos to identify suspects. This time, it contains a photo known as what becomes the blink photo. That's kind of the name it is given. And the blink photo refers to a photo of Watson that was included in this particular montage where Watson's eyes are half closed. It does look like he's essentially blinking. In fact, I'll let you take a look at the photo right here.
Yeah. Looks maybe intoxicated a little bit.
I believe there's a second photo of this that I didn't include here where he's looking up and to the right. I think this is of this time period. Like, this is a very recent photo of him. And I think he genuinely is just blinking. And so It's kind of, in a very subtle way, obscuring his face, because if his eyes were truly open fully and normally, you might properly see his face. Either way, right, this is the piece of evidence that a lot of this case leans on and pivots around. So, not realizing that this blink photo, as it's called, was Watson, Wallace said that this photo, this man, could be, in his words, could be the mystery man. Wallace would later say that he felt immense pressure from police during the investigation, and we'll talk more about that later on. But this is fascinating because earlier on, Wallace failed to identify Watson in the lineup, coupling that with the fact that Watson's boat wildly misrepresents the details that Wallace's fresh description and sketches of the boat showed. It seems like now only under pressure with a photo of somebody blinking does Wallace say that Watson could be the person.
Does that make that big of a difference? Is it kind of blinking?
Okay, this is now I almost want to find Christian, if you don't mind, help me out. I'm curious if you can find the photo of him in this very same situation, not blinking, just to see if, for the sake of experiment, if he does look that different. If Clark Kent can slap on some sunglasses, or I mean just regular glasses, and look like a different person.
It just seems so wild to me.
I mean, Wallace himself said, I didn't recognize that as Watson. And Wallace also might be biased, if I'm honest. He could also be biased because he himself is convinced that Watson is not the guy. And so if he saw a photo and he recognized it as Watson, even if it looked like the mystery man, he might be inclined to say it's not. You know? There's a little sprinkling of devil's advocate there, but I'm very curious if Christian, you can find that photo. Oh, you got it. Okay. So there's another photo, seemingly very similar lighting and similar angle. What do you think, Fredo? Does he look a lot different?
Not a lot different, but enough to make me go, okay, hold on, is this the same guy?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lot different, but when you're looking, initial thoughts, same dude. As I sit here and I keep looking more and more, I'm like, okay, hold on now. The nose might seem to appear a little bit bigger on the right photo. The chin a little bit more and jawline a little bit more defined on the right side, but that's lighting stuff.
It's lighting, and it also could be focal depth. Like the focal length of a lens can change how you look. You know, your front-facing camera on your phone is wide-angled.
Yep.
That's not how you look to the human eye.
True. And the hairline is the exact same, though.
Yes.
Eyebrows, they're the same. You can argue the eyes are the same as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the ears.
Ooh, good call, yeah.
Then you get into it, you know, the neck and a little bit of the neck muscles, and then along with the traps, those are very similar in both photos.
Yeah.
The nose can throw you off, though. The size of the mouth can throw you off, but that's just, I think that's photos. Mostly the nose can throw you off here.
Yeah.
But it did make me stop. Is the more I looked at it, I went, is it? And I had to really, really look. So it's not as clear cut as you think it would be.
Right. And maybe that's where Wallace comes in with it could be the guy. I don't know. And that's enough for police to go, got it. But looking at these, I'm with you. The face looks longer, and because the mouth is kind of like he's biting the inside of his cheek, or he's literally moving, something like he's like emoting with his mouth, and he's like mid-blink.
Mm-hmm.
So his features are a little bit obscured from his resting face. Yep. So it offers just enough. Thank you, Christian, for finding that. It's not the exact same environment of the exact same moment, but it is the photo I recalled seeing at a glimpse. Okay, so Wallace says that this could be the mystery man, and Detective Inspector Pope would later say that, well, Watson, quote, stood out like a dog's balls, end quote, in terms of being a likely perpetrator of this crime.
Like a dog's balls?
I guess if you see a dog with a hanging pear walking down the street, you kind of notice.
It does stand out. It does.
I guess that works as a turn of phrase, New Zealand. You get to claim that one. He also claimed that Watson had the, quote, right sort of agenda and pedigree, end quote, to commit the crimes.
What the heck does that mean?
Oh, well, we'll dive into it because he does have a bit of a rap sheet. But
okay.
It's also reported that police leaned on the fact that he sailed solo that weekend. So in the court of law, I'll build on this, they kind of painted this picture to the jury. They said he sailed there alone, looking to hunt. He was looking to pull people onto his vessel, do whatever he does, murder them, dump them at sea. They used that solo traveling as a way to paint a very horrible image. And I don't know everything. I'm not omniscient, so maybe, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's how it is, though. I remember having to do like a jury duty and just like seeing the lawyers go at it. You know, one lawyer goes up and it was like, he was this and he was that and he was this. I was like, oh, that makes sense. And the other lawyer was like, well, this, and that. I'm like, oh, that kind of makes sense too now.
You're like, uh-oh. Because
this isn't as clear as I thought it would be.
And you know someone did something or someone didn't do something. There's no like, well, I just, as the juror, I'll just stay in the middle. You know, there's none of that.
No.
You have to pick a side.
You have to. And it had to be unanimous and everything. And so, yeah, we sat there for a while trying to figure it out. And so it's very interesting to see all that stuff.
Okay.
And so, yeah, no, the lawyers, they really do. When they say like they work the jury, that is, yeah, firsthand. You feel like you trust them. You feel like they've got it all together, that they figured it out. And then the next one steps up and you go, wait a minute. He starts to unravel everything you thought was real. And it's just like your mind. It's just being split. It's crazy.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
You know, like I get it, but also, I'm just fingers crossed, man. I don't want to end up in a situation where it's not like somebody ran a red light and then that's all I'm here for, you know, like, nah, we have to character assassinate and then we have to character build and then.
Yeah, it's really what it was.
So let's talk now about the agenda and the pedigree. So the agenda might have been the solo trip that they painted, but the pedigree is interesting. So Watson reportedly had 48 criminal convictions at the time. Most of them were from his teenage years. You know, he is now 26 or 27. It's not too far in the rearview mirror. But as somebody who went through this time period, you kind of become a little bit of a different person through your 20s. Listen, I can't hand wave away 48 criminal convictions. Sorry, man, you're on your own.
That's a lot, man. It does not help you at all.
No. And so now you can kind of see a little bit of the motivation from the police. They're like, listen, he's got a boat. He was out there at the time. He looks enough like it. And now Wallace has pointed him out. Plus this, again, the pedigree, as they called it. I can see why maybe they got stern about their decision and went after. Now, these 48 criminal convictions include charges like burglary, theft, cannabis offenses, an assault charge from when he was 16, and 2 counts of possessing an offensive weapon. Now, what's interesting and helps provide a little bit more context, because we talked a little bit about, well, that was when he was a teen, now he's 26, 27. He reportedly did 2 stints in prison. One was in 1989 and one was in 1990. But by all accounts, things had gotten better for him, with only 1 conviction between 1990 and 1998. I don't know exactly the year that it was, nor could I find what specifically the conviction was, if it was something like cannabis offenses versus assault.
Right.
I mean, there's a different weight there.
There is.
But it does seem to indicate a lot of criminal behavior in a shorter period of time. And then after his stints in prison, it seems like there was 1 relapse where he did something. We don't know. Otherwise, it seemed like he might have been on the straight and narrow, like he might have corrected.
Started turning things around, yeah.
It's possible. I can see how one would make that argument. I can see how that would make sense. Now, before we head into the trial discussion, it is worth reiterating, I think, because of the nature of this conversation, that it was only a few days after the disappearance, January 12th, that Watson's boat, the Blade, was seized, and police made it clear from that point that Watson was considered their primary suspect. Everything else, all the further developments, the photos being taken, the family being pressured to kind of point this direction, we'll talk about that. All of that comes after the fact that they had kind of seemingly made their decision just 12 days after the disappearance.
Yeah, I mean, when you have so many priors, chances are high that you're going to be a repeat offender. I don't know. I don't know what the statistics are for someone with his priors and that conversion to a percentage of, you know, becoming someone that actually murders, you know?
Right. That is a great just point to make. I don't know that statistic either. And statistics, you know, have like a bell curve to them. There are always outliers as well. But, you know, burglary, theft, cannabis offenses are all certainly crimes. And it doesn't seem like there was violence within those. But then there is an assault charge and 2 counts of possessing an offensive weapon. And so it does start to reach into the territory that the next step could be murder, could be disappearance, or could be accidental death, which is still manslaughter. Again, we're starting to get into the realms where I'm just kind of seeing how it's possible. I don't know the case well enough to make heads or tails because I wasn't there. The only people that were are going through trial, and the truth is trying to be whittled out. With that, let's dive into the trial. It began on June 10th, 1999, and it lasted for 11 weeks in total. You know how, like in cases here in the United States, it might be Bob versus the state of Alabama, or it might be Huck versus United States. This was kind of confusing to me for a second, but I forgot New Zealand does recognize the royalty, the crown, and so King Charles is the king of New Zealand. And so when you have a case like this, it is the crown. But in this case, they're the prosecution coming after Scott Watson, but they are also the crown. So if I say that, that's kind of, they mean the same. So in total, the crown reportedly brought in 488 witnesses, much more than the 26 witnesses brought in by the defense.
Damn. How is there that many witnesses in the first place?
That's a good question.
What? Hold on. We're in the 400s? Like 480, you said?
488 versus 26 for the defense.
Where? Is it just from the party?
It could be. It could be from the party. It could be people that knew him. It could be past witnesses to previous crimes. I'll be honest with you. This is one of the many court documents I poured through. And so I'm pulling out the key data.
Yeah.
That information is likely out there, as is the name and jobs of all of those individuals. But it's a lot of people. And it could also be, as you kind of indicated, a strategy, an exhaustive strategy to sway the jury one way or the other, because it could just be a numbers game. When you hear from 488 people, all tilted towards a certain direction, listen, they probably undergo cross-examination. Right. The defense gets to ask their questions as well.
It's mind-numbing.
Mind-numbing, I imagine. Okay, so the witness count is very much swayed in a certain direction. So during this trial, interestingly, and again, I'm going to keep it to the key witnesses instead of the 500 plus, or we could probably make a 5-episode Netflix docuseries on this particular case. It's wildly fascinating. But there was another water taxi driver. His name was Don Anderson. He provided new information on Watson's whereabouts that night, and this is critical. So Anderson claimed that he dropped Watson off at his boat, the Blade, between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. That is quite a wide gap, but he is saying, I dropped him off at his boat at that time. Other occupants on neighboring boats of the Blade also testified that Watson was there because he was waking people up in the early hours of the morning looking to continue the party. And so it seems factual that, boom, Watson was on his boat between 2 and 4 a.m. Now, before we continue, I want to make sure we have a very clear timeline here. So I'd like to recap for just a second. So night of December 31st, 1997, New Year's Eve party at the Lodge. Now it's January 1st after midnight. Celebrations have gone on and now died down. The party seems to be getting a little bit more quiet. So now between the hours of 2 and 4 a.m. that night, Watson is taken to his boat, the Blade. That same night, just a few hours later, around 4 a.m., Smart and Hope are taken to their yacht by Wallace, only to find it full. Shortly after 4 a.m., Smart and Hope reboard Wallace's water taxi, where they meet an unidentified man, or Watson, as argued by the Crown, who offered them a boat to sleep on. Sometime after that, Smart and Hope are dropped off at this man's vessel and never seen again. Can you see an inconsistency here?
Not that's jumping out to me, but what's jumping out to me too is just the thought of like, it's his boat, but I mean, in a way, boats are just so easily accessed. Anyone could just walk onto the dock, onto the boat. Like, okay, it's my boat, then I might have lended it out, but like anybody could have walked on that deck. Just thinking about it now, it's not like a house with like a.
Yeah, especially when 3 to 5 other boats are said to be moored with it out there.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm gonna address what you just said in a second, but I don't want to get away from the timeline. So I have it all visually in front of me, which helps. It's kind of why I wanted to go over the recap. But the key note here is that if Watson was on the water taxi after 4 a.m. when Smart and Hope boarded, how did he get on that water taxi from his boat, the Blade, right? The Crown and the defense both agreed that this trip took place, the trip wherein Watson was taken out to his ship between the hours of 2 and 4 a.m. So this new detail raises that question: how did Watson make it back to the Lodge in order to then be on Wallace's water taxi sometime after 4 a.m.? That's the big question. That is the big gap in this case. And we're going to talk about that in a second, but you just got my mind blown just by a small thought. What if the mystery man, Watson or otherwise, knew what he wanted to do? Hey, come sleep on my ship, Smart and Hope. You can stay on board mine. And he guides Wallace to whatever, because clearly Wallace didn't know him at that time. Might have recognized him, but didn't know him from Steve. So they go off to a boat. And if these 3 to 5 other boats are around his ship, what if he's to say, yeah, this is my boat. Let's get on this white one with a blue stripe and 2 masts. That's my boat. And then he goes, oh, whoops, I'm drunk. After the water taxi leaves, he tells the 2, oh, actually, I made a mistake. My boat's attached just over there. Let's kind of meander over to it, you know? And so maybe the catch was a misdirect. And I don't know. See, the possibilities are endless. Like,
I know, that's the thing.
What if he purposely dropped off at a wrong boat, but the blade was always it, you know?
The thing is that there's just so many, it just expands, right? Mm-hmm. Like a cracked window, and spiders out to so many different paths.
So many could-bes, and I think that's dangerous to play in, to be fair. But that's why you got to lean on hard facts and evidence, because when I start to go, well, it could be that he went to the wrong ship on purpose. Okay, based on what though? You know, realistically, what am I going on about?
Yeah, because there's a million, this, could be that.
Right. Okay, so let's get back to what the court was focused on, which wasn't a could be, it was very much the is. So Watson goes out to his boat, somehow makes it back to the lodge in order to get back onto a different water taxi that happened to go out to this yacht that happened to have them get on, and then he preys on these 2 individuals. In what became known as the 2-trip theory, the Crown argued that they could not determine how Watson returned to shore, but they were certain that it happened. They don't know how he did it, when it happened, but they know it happened because it was a prerequisite for this whole thing to be perpetrated by Watson. They argued, actually, that it was irrelevant how exactly Watson made it back to the lodge area because it was factual. They said witnesses placed him in an altercation on the shore between 3 and 3:30 a.m., so it doesn't matter how he got back to the shore. The point is, he was there. I think what happened on the shore, if I remember, in the depositions of the witnesses, was that he brought a bottle of rum. He wasn't able to go back into the lodge, and so he stayed on the beach and he drank it, got a little belligerent, wanted to keep partying with people, but everyone's trying to wind down. And so that's when he makes some unruly comments to women, and this scuffle, this altercation kind of happens. And that's where the eyewitnesses are saying he was here at 3 to 3:30.
Got it.
If that's true, which it sounds like it was by eyewitness accounts, then it is very possible for him to then
have left,
maybe be ushered onto a water taxi, and now he's in a totally different headspace because that paints a picture of a very intoxicated individual. He might even be very upset.
Right, because he was shoved off or forced to leave or asked to leave, etc. So he's frustrated at that point.
And then it starts to paint the picture that the Crown is going after, which is a vindictive, intentional crime that was planned ahead. From here, I'll go back to kind of how the trial unfolded. The Crown then claimed that Watson would have then, taken the water taxi back out, met and offered lodging to Smart and Hope, and then ultimately killed them and dumped their bodies into the Cook Strait before then heading back to the Erie Bay to then disguise his vessel, his boat, with a new paint job. So let's unpack that claim with a few things.
That's kind of massive, a new paint job.
A new paint job. Very untimely. Very suspicious.
That is very suspicious, though. Quite unfortunate. And also, I would have canceled that paint job.
Yeah. Yes, I would have. Unless the deposit was huge, in which case, still cancel it. Okay, so let's unpack it. The Cook Strait is the waterway separating New Zealand's North and South Islands, and so it's not far away. Basically, you leave the Endeavour Inlet, you go out into that kind of the strait that's not too far away, dump the bodies out into the Pacific, they would wash, and then supposedly heads back into Erie Bay, which is just another area of Marlborough Sound. Originally, the Crown claimed that they believed Watson dumped the bodies around 4:30 p.m. and was then in Erie Bay by 5. So this whole claim got unpacked in the court of law and was analyzed deeply. Some claim that the police never tested this route. So To sit in court and say you were out there at sea at 4:30 and then back here in this bay at 5, that doesn't make sense. But if they never tested it, they can't be proven wrong by their own experiment. However, it is said that Watson's father did in fact test that route on similar conditions, I believe. And so he went out to the Cook Strait and then he came back to Erie Bay and he said, it's a biased source, but he is still a sailor. He says it took 2.5 hours. And so by that evidence, his son must be innocent. As for the new paint job, Watson argued that this was or had been scheduled for a while. This was something he planned back at the end of 1997. And so it doesn't look great. The timing is terrible.
Yeah,
but he does have a reason for it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think then that proves that, right?
Does he have receipts? I don't recall. I know what he said, but I don't know if he can prove it, right?
I mean, yeah, because then if you can prove that, then you just drop that, in my opinion. It's already pre-scheduled.
Right.
It would be some mastermind stuff to be like, I'm going to schedule for this day, and then I'm going to commit a crime on this day, and then it'll be covered. Like, that's just, you're trying to connect too many dots.
There's a lot of dots to connect, but again, it played into what the Crown was saying or what the prosecution was saying, which is this solo traveler has a rap sheet as long as my arm, and he planned to do something sinister that night. And even if he planned to get this paint job in 1997, it might sound outlandish to you, but that's kind of the vision that they were portraying for the jury. I mean, you know where this is going. It did work. But in the end, most of the case against Scott Watson was considered to be circumstantial. Now, here is a new piece I want to unfold because the Crown largely relied on 2 testimonies. We talked about the ID of Watson in photos, once by Wallace and another by the bar manager at the lodge named Roz McNeely. We'll talk about her in a little bit. But we also have some deposition from prison informants. These informants both claimed that they met with Watson when he was in prison awaiting trial. Their names remained anonymous, so for all intents and purposes, we have Witness A and Witness B, but these are the prison informants that knew or had supposedly met with Watson in prison. Both witnesses delivered damning testimony claiming that Watson had explicitly told them he was responsible for Smart and Hope's disappearance. While no fingerprints were found on Watson's boat, police found one piece of physical evidence, a blanket that carried human hair. Upon testing, the Crown stated that this hair was a definitive match with Olivia Hope. I believe in a lot of the articles they talk about the odds that they leaned on. The Crown basically said this is a 1 in 25,000 chance that it's not Olivia. So like really trying to convey a high level of confidence.
Yeah, it's like, this is, lock it in.
Yeah.
There's no way to disprove this.
Totally. Now, while this was a key piece of evidence that swayed the jury, there were several other elements used against Watson. And there's a lot of them, but reading through these several 100-page documents and appeal trials and things, there's a few that I wanted to pull out that I thought were interesting. So on one hand, there were 176 scratches discovered on the underside of a hatch on the blade. I believe in this hatch, it is like a foam interior, so it's kind of a delicate material. And after testing things like screwdriver scraping across it or a ruler, things that could have left marks in it, it was determined by ESR scientist Peter Wilson that these were made by human fingernails. Though he said he didn't try any of the other items on the vessel because he was convinced of his conclusion. He was like, there's no sense in trying a fishing pole or other things that might belong on this boat because I'm pretty sure it's fingernails. Additionally, Anderson, who was the second water taxi driver, reported that Watson was wearing a blue denim shirt similar to the unknown man's Levi shirt reported by Wallace. So that's a damning piece of evidence that his shirt was very similar. Now, this shirt was never found on the vessel, but it was argued that it might have potentially been thrown away, thrown out to sea, or disposed of at some point in time. And so that becomes within the trials, that becomes a long-standing conversation. What happened to this missing shirt? Because it is the shirt that would have definitively pinned him to the idea of this mysterious man wearing a similar shirt. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, though, the testimony from these prisoners, these witnesses, the scratches, the missing shirt, but certainly the hair and the match to Olivia Hope, It was all enough to sway the jury, and on September 11, 1999, Watson was convicted of the murders and was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. When the verdict was announced, Watson told the jury simply, quote, "You're wrong," end quote, and has maintained his innocence ever since.
Once you start getting into like DNA evidence and stuff like that, that's when it gets kind of difficult. You know, I'd like to hear what the counter argument was, you know, during that time. I could see why they swayed that way though. It's just unfortunate because like, what if he is, you know, and he's locked away, what, 17 years?
With minimum non-parole period of 17 years, but otherwise life in prison, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you asked, because both during and after the trial and the conviction, there were many arguments that proved the court had convicted the wrong man. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to dismantle things like the hair sample, the prison witnesses. But to get the ball rolling, I'm going to start with some smaller wrinkles that have to do with the scratches on the hatch. Thanks to testimony from Watson's ex-girlfriend, these scratches were argued to be from Watson's nieces sometime in the later part of 1997 or even after the event. It's hard to tell because police didn't really attribute much importance to these scratches in the initial search of the vessel. They kind of only became important later on.
Nieces? It was just like, what, some roughhousing playtime with the nieces prior?
From what I read, his nieces were like 4 and 5 years old, and they had been on the vessel. Additionally, there's some other wrinkles, like there were scratches outside of the hatch, which wouldn't have been able to be reached if the hatch was closed. And so, again, it's not like the main cornerstone of this case, but it was an interesting piece that I wanted to include. And so it is said like the children kind of scratched it because it felt nice. In fact, I think Watson's ex-girlfriend often rubbed it with her hand when she knew it was smooth. She was like, in 1997, I knew it was smooth because I like to touch it. And so maybe the kids were just attracted to it. And like any kid, once you realize something can be easily marred, you just kind of keep doing it.
Yeah, you just keep going at it for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So now comes the slew of dismantling and why. You know, I wanted to try to play devil's advocate along the road because I wanted people to kind of build their own thoughts along the way, but here's why so many people believe this is a wrongful conviction, starting with the hair sample. So during the trial, it was revealed that 390 human hairs were recovered. A forensic biologist named Susan Vintiner testified that one hair was matched to Hope through DNA testing. However, the accuracy of the tests have been questioned, both during that initial trial and by outside experts after the trial had commenced. The defense argued that it's possible Vintiner mixed up the hair samples by examining Hope's hair that was provided for comparison, right? So basically, there was a table that had this like a pouch of hairs in it, and on the same table as that evidence of collected hairs was actual hair from, I'm assuming, Hope's house, and so they knew it was her hair because they needed a way to actually get a positive test. The defense is saying, since they were so close in proximity, there could have been cross-contamination between the evidence bag and the actual sample of known Hope's hair. Yeah.
Okay, but then we're playing in the realm of what if, what could have been.
But it's plausible, right? It's
plausible. It is.
The jury needs to convict essentially without any doubts, right?
Yeah.
But the reason why they said that was because the evidence bag that contained the hair actually had a 1 centimeter hole in it. So it did put it at risk of contamination. So there is a shadow of a doubt here. Vintiner actually testified that it's not entirely ruled out. Contamination is literally on the table. This would make the only piece of physical evidence related to the case irrelevant. Moving on, it actually gets kind of worse. So after the trial, both witnesses that came forward saying that they were prison inmates that met with Watson, etc., they also said that they had falsified their claims, both of them. Witness A told several lawyers and the NZ Herald publication that he lied in court. He claimed that he was receiving death threats from a gang and was soon to be up for parole. In hope that police would save him, he cooperated with them. He also stated that officers visited him at least 10 times over a year-long period leading up to the trial. They reportedly pressured him to make false accusations in his statements.
That's a little wild.
I'm wondering why he changed his mind and said, yeah, I lied. You know, what made him kind of confess after the fact?
Guilt. Then with the guilt you compound, maybe he's reading up and, you know, people are like, I don't think he's I think he's innocent, and look at this, and it could have been this and that. And so he's sitting there going like, oh man, well, I know that he's innocent, or I heavily think so because I was forced to make stuff up.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And it eats away at you, man. As you get older, as time becomes less and less of a given to you, you start to look back on regrets and stuff like that sometimes, especially if you've done a lot of things that are worth regretting.
And like I said, it wasn't just witness A. Witness B also confessed to lying. He went on to say, witness B, that he and Watson had interacted on several occasions, but never developed a relationship close enough for any sort of confession of this caliber to be made to him. He doesn't go on to say like the police pressured him or anything. That was witness A. But it was also revealed that when released from prison to give his testimony, witness B was granted the use of a car and a cell phone, which is extremely abnormal. I would say that this is slightly preferential treatment, but this is wildly preferential treatment, that you don't get a car and a cell phone.
No, you don't.
So another piece there, but let's continue on. So once again, after the trial, both Wallace, the water taxi driver / bartender, and McNeely, who was the bar manager, both came forward, saying they too felt immense pressure from officers throughout the investigation. Wallace argued that police misled him into using or identifying the blink photo, as it was called, and he himself said he believes that Watson is innocent. He was interviewed several times, upholding the same view. He even signed an affidavit saying that he misidentified Watson. And that's not a small thing at all. That is akin to lying under oath.
Yeah,
an affidavit is a sworn, signed testimony that can be introduced to the court of law as a piece of evidence. And so for him to say this and sign it, it carries some weight. And he actually maintained his stance until his death in 2021. McNeely, she also positively ID'd Watson using the blink photo. And she also went back on her claim after seeing a normal photo of Watson. What's more is that she also signed an affidavit saying she mistakenly identified him. So really, this blink photo got both of them. Nobody else, but it's like it is one of the elements that really helped solidify Watson. And now the only two people that ID'd that photo are now basically saying under oath, oh, I was wrong. That's not that person.
So then, oh man, is it like, do you release the person at this point? Like, what is a protocol here?
Well, he has gone back to retrial multiple times for appeals, and none of them have been successful though so far. But what's interesting here is we have one more photo for you to take a look at. Photos from New Year's Eve also show a clean-shaven Watson, which is a huge mismatch from the scruffy, unidentified man. Again, recall that Wallace described him as having 2 days worth of facial hair and medium-length, curly, dark hair.
That is not a match.
Not a match.
This man is clean shaven, which makes sense for the party. But that's evidence. There's like clear as day evidence of that.
I believe it was the NZ Herald that said that this photo, now it's cropped in just to show him in particular, but I believe it was taken at 10 p.m. that night, December 31st, 1997. However, Kat Cardenas, our researcher, also noted that some people argued that this photo might have been from a different occasion. So I'm not sure on that. That did kind of waffle me a little bit there. But so I just wanted to put that out for posterity. But if that is him that night, the thing about having dark hair is that facial hair shows up quickly. And so, speaking from experience, I can see facial hair on him even if he is clean shaven. Could it look like 2 days worth at night? I don't know. Maybe. That doesn't look like the same length as the sketch that we show. The hair, though, on the head. You mentioned party in the back. I don't see no party.
There's no party at all. There's not. The hair is completely different. And so I would say it's not the same person.
Yeah, well, many would.
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing is that like it's gone to retrial and it just isn't enough, I guess.
It seems that way. So while it's unclear what the other couple on the water taxi that night believed, it is clear that others who witnessed Scott Watson believe him to be different than the man who lured out Smart and Hope that night. Now, above all, this is kind of like leading us to the closure here. It is believed by many that the police and the Crown grossly mishandled the case. Even Olivia's father, Gerald Hope, has told journalists that he, quote, felt very uncomfortable about the way the Crown ran the case, end quote. Between overlooked witness accounts, misleading witnesses, manipulation of witness testimonies, and the unlikely but convenient two-trip theory, it's clear that the full story may never come to light. Before closing out, I'll mention one vague theory that offers an alternative to the focus on Watson. This is the only nugget of a theory that I've seen out there, but this theory claims that Smart and Hope may have stumbled upon a boat of an international drug smuggler or a drug dealer, someone who wasn't seen in the area to begin with because they simply fled into the Pacific that very night. There was one claim of an eyewitness that attempts to back this up. It's a blurry photo, so I didn't include it here in our notes, Fredo, but there's a photo that is very blurry that exists out there that the person says, I saw Hope 5 days after she was supposedly disappeared. This was in the far north reaches of New Zealand, so the North Island and like the kind of peninsula that sticks out. This claim has long gone unsubstantiated, and the reason I didn't include the photo is because it's so blurry. You see a person in the distance near a boat and it circles them. I can't tell if it's them or not.
Yeah.
But many have discussed the idea that maybe it was somebody who was had a crime of opportunity, snatched them, and then just disappeared. Hence why no one ever saw this person or knew him. But there's not much else. No other theories really that are worth discussing, I think, or that I've seen.
Yeah, with heavy weight to it or anything. It's just kind of like small little theories.
Yeah, and then again, like that's the only theory I've really seen, so I don't want to pretend that there's other smaller ones. But since his conviction in 1999, Watson has maintained his innocence and fought for his freedom. His repeated appeals have been denied, even though more evidence has come out further proving the mishandling of the case.
Damn.
Later DNA testing techniques tried testing 30 more hairs, but none had Hope or Smart's DNA. In 2024, Ventiner admitted that the initial search for blanket hairs was done by a technician and not herself.
What?
Which was not... Yeah. I mean, it's not a big deal, but what's interesting is that during the trial, that was not known, and it would have added more uncertainty to the one piece of physical evidence. You know, a technician can go collect evidence, but it needs to be known, especially if you, Ventiner, are putting your name on the line to say, you know, as a professional, this, that, and the other was done. So it kind of makes one think, well, maybe these were mishandled. Maybe these were accidentally mixed up with positive samples. So this would have cast more doubt on this particular corner of the case. However, as of the most recent appeal, which ended, again, I think in September, but certainly in 2025, his conviction stands. The Court of Appeal found no faults in the case regarding the new evidence and maintains the conviction. The bodies of Ben Smart and Olivia Hope have never been found. And while there aren't many other theories as to what happened to the young pair that New Year's Eve, many agree that they got the wrong guy.
It's so split down the middle, man. And when you go, okay, I can see why. There's all this evidence. And there's DNA, and there's technology used. And then over the years, so many people coming out and being like, I was pushed to say this stuff, or I wasn't the one that looked at it, but someone else looked at the evidence. It's an absolute mess.
It is a mess. It is a mess. And he certainly should have been tried as a suspect, but I'm very curious why they didn't pursue, if Ketches or two masked ships were really like a Lamborghini in the area, go chase those down.
Yeah.
What's the owner? Who's the owner? What do they look like? Talk to them, investigate.
Yeah, because there might even be, can you just pull up the ports like that? Or don't you have to have like some kind of say something, do something?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you just sail on in, especially if you're sailing to a residence or maybe a hotel, there might be a record. It's not like you're sailing into a marina every time, nor do you have to basically, I don't think, I'm not a maritime sailor, but I don't believe that just kind of sailing into any of these Marlborough Sound bays and inlets do you have to like kind of call on record and say boat such and such, B-22 coming in on Erie Inlet or
right.
Something, but...
Especially late at night.
Yeah. So I don't know how much air traffic control, so to speak, there is there, to be honest. But man, really frustrating. When it comes to Gerald Hope, another piece of information came to mind, the police said that I don't know how to say this. I don't want to sound biased, but like a lot of people are saying that the police were basically the origin of gossip, that they were the origin of rumors on Watson. And one of the key substantiating factors there was Mr. Hope saying, well, yeah, when I was in private conversations with them, they were saying a lot of crap. You know, they were painting him in a certain light and pressuring with a lot of negativity on this guy. And so it's interesting for them to say, no, we're not the source of this gossip. This is just his reputation. But then in a private conversation, kind of be sipping the tea and dishing the goss, you know, like, so I don't know, man. It's really tough because, man, you want to rely on investigation. You know, again, we've sat on both sides of this fence, and it all depends contextually on what's happening in the case that you and I see. But man, this one feels very weird. I can understand why so many people believe that this was the wrong guy.
Yeah, mishandled completely.
Yeah, regardless, a controversial conviction, regardless of which you believe, you know?
Yeah, I'm just surprised. I mean, then again, there's so much, you know, still left to cover because it's just such an in-depth case, but it seemed like there weren't any like other major suspects. I don't know though. Like I said, anyone else could have walked onto that dock. They could have gone onto the wrong boat. Like there's a number of what ifs that could happen there. And it just so happens to be that he was just the one in proximity, but he does have priors. I don't know. I'm pulled both ways.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong to bring your experience as a juror to the table, because in your own experience, you've seen how you've been pulled both ways. There's a lot to chew on with this one, but I can't help but see how a lot of, at least in the public eye, in the court of public opinion, as they say, a lot of the key pieces of evidence have been rattled a bit. Yeah, it's a wild case and obviously still unfolding. And, you know, if he's innocent, as he should continue to fight and continue to ask for an appeal, because it's now been approaching 20 years of his life.
Yeah.
You know, to go away at 27 or 28 and then spend like the prime of your life in prison, that's wild. That's wild. I wouldn't be surprised if this genuinely, I know I joked earlier, genuinely becomes some sort of docu-series.
Oh, yeah.
To cover all, I mean, I was up late looking at just hundreds of pages of court documents going, what, I can't not say this, but I can't include every detail here. Like, it is one of the most extensive cases I think we've covered. A wealth of data and conversation to be had. But with that said, though, I think we'll leave it here, maybe for a revisit if there's new developments and what have you. Do like a Red Web appendix or something.
Yeah, for sure.
But with that, Task Force, we want to thank you guys. Thank you so much. You know, you support our show directly. You share us with your moms and your friends in the world. You review us, but you also come to redwebpod.com. You enter the Matrix with us. You hang out with us. You do a lot to support us. So thank you. In particular, I want to thank the newest Task Force member, Amanda Hampton. Thank you so much for joining us. Scott Jennings, Buff Scientist of the Week, the Rippling Vascular Brain, and then, of course, the Squonks of the week are Dakota, Wolf 472, and James Hill. Thank you all so much. And Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.